We are here today to announce that we are supporting Edgar Barrientos Quintana's request for exoneration. Almost 15 years ago, a grievous injustice occurred. Our office charged Mr. Barrientos Quintana with, and a jury convicted him of, first-degree murder for fatally shooting Jesse Michelson. He was sentenced to life without parole. After a careful review of the records in this case, we agree with the conclusion of the Attorney General's Conviction Review Unit that the evidence establishes Mr. Barrientos Quintana's innocence and that he was convicted of a crime he did not do. We do not reach this decision lightly, and we do not reach it with any joy. This has been a terrible process for Jesse Michelson's family, some of whom are with us today, who thought they had received justice for Jesse. They are sitting with the emotions of knowing that an innocent man has been in prison in Jesse's name. To Jesse's family and loved ones, I am so deeply sorry for what you're going through. And while this may be a celebratory day for Mr. Barrientos Quintana, who is one step closer to receiving the relief he requests, he has spent 15 years in a prison cell for a crime he did not commit. This happened because, as the Attorney General's CRU found, prosecutors from this office and investigators from the Minneapolis Police Department ignored the obvious evidence before them and failed to follow known best practices to convict the man they convinced themselves was responsible for the murder, a man who was innocent. We are sorry to both Mr. Barrientos Quintana and his family, and to the family of Jesse Michelson. We received this case after the Conviction Review Unit of the Minnesota Attorney General, Keith Ellison, conducted an in-depth, multi-year investigation and concluded that Mr. Barrientos Quintana is innocent. The CRU recommended that his conviction be vacated and the charges be dismissed. Today, we filed a brief agreeing that the conviction should be vacated. Now it will be up to the court to decide what to do. If the court vacates his conviction, we will dismiss the charges. Here are some, not all, of the problems identified by the Attorney General's report. There was no physical evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, no gun tying Mr. Barrientos Quintana to the crime. 33 minutes before the South Minneapolis shooting, Mr. Barrientos Quintana was on video with his girlfriend in a grocery store in Maplewood, which is on the east side of St. Paul. And phone records show Mr. Barrientos Quintana at a location 28 minutes away after the shooting. A CRU investigator, who is a retired MPD sergeant, traced the same route and found it took well over 33 minutes to get to the scene of the shooting, making it improbable, if not impossible, for Barrientos Quintana to be the shooter. That same night, that same grocery store video clearly showed Mr. Barrientos Quintana the night of the murder with a thick head of hair. Eyewitnesses to the shooting consistently described the shooter as bald or having a shaved head. Minneapolis police investigators used a photo lineup containing an old photo of Mr. Barrientos Quintana with a shaved head, knowing at the time of the shooting he had a thick head of dark hair. The photo lineups violated the Minneapolis Police Department protocols and failed to follow best practices that would help ensure the reliability of any eyewitness identification. And these were best practices that the Hennepin County Attorney's Office not only knew about, but the trial prosecutor in this case had developed with the identification expert the CRU cites in their report about the issues with this case. The problems don't end there. Here are some others highlighted in the CRU report. Multiple witnesses named someone else as the shooter early on, and MPD investigators used suggestive and coercive interview techniques with youth witnesses to get them to identify Mr. Barrientos Quintana or to change their descriptions of the shooter to match Mr. Barrientos Quintana's appearance that day. Prosecutors elicited false testimony at trial that no one had identified someone other than Mr. Barrientos Quintana as the shooter. Prosecutors also failed to give the defense constitutionally required information in a timely fashion, or in some cases, disclose at all. Finally, MPD gave access to the investigation to the reality show The First 48, which claims that if detectives don't find a lead in the first 48 hours, their chances of solving the case are cut in half. The prosecution knew that a lead MPD investigator made comments scripted by The First 48 about the investigation for the episode which was aired shortly before the trial, and they failed to disclose this fact to the defense. Because of these issues, the jury and the courts did not hear about all the facts in this case. Thanks to the CRU report, we now have all of the facts, and they point to Mr. Barrientos Quintana's innocence. We are hopeful that the court will give Mr. Barrientos Quintana the relief we believe he deserves. But this is a sad day all around. Our legal system failed Mr. Barrientos Quintana. Our legal system also failed Jesse's family, who almost 16 years later must again wonder who killed their loved one. I want to thank Jesse Michelson's family for their bravery and their strength. I want to thank Mr. Barrientos Quintana for continuing to fight his case. And I want to thank all of those who continued to fight to work to uncover the truth. I want to thank the Attorney General and his Conviction Review Unit for their incredibly thorough investigation, the Great North Innocence Project and Julie Jonas, who represented Mr. Barrientos Quintana, and our staff, both attorneys and non-attorneys and community members who recognize the importance of righting our wrongs and helping us work towards justice. I want to ask Tina Rosebear, who is the older sister of Jesse, to make some comments.
Hello. I have a poem I want to read that my little sister wrote before I say what I want to say. And this was written by my little sister, Angel. It says, Imagine being so excited to show your brother your new shoes, smiling while skipping over to him across the alley. He's awaiting you with a big smile, but a car is approaching, so you stop to let it pass, but you suddenly hear gunshots and see everyone running. You see your brother grab his chest and fall back. The car takes off and you run to him. He takes his final breath and your world crashes down. The PTSD, the anxiety, depression, guilt, ruin your once happy spirit. Imagine thinking we had justice for Jesse. All these years just to find out we're back to square one. We may never get justice. My heart goes out to Edgar and his family. All those years taken from you. It isn't right, and I'm so sorry. May you find the strength to carry on in life with your head held high. Every day I miss my brother, my best friend. We were inseparable. I will never get that back. Imagine who Jesse would be today. And that was by my little sister, Angel. And I just want to say a few things. It's hard. It's been 16 years. But I would rather have no conviction than the wrong conviction. I want to apologize to Edgar and his family for everything that they've endured through these last going on 16 years. I want to apologize most importantly because I held a lot of anger for a man that had nothing to do with it. And it hurts to know that we were failed because of a wrong conviction. My brother was very outgoing. He was just starting to spread his wings. He was 18 looking to go to IPR to pursue a music career, and all that was taken from him. I don't know. Jesse was very outgoing and our only brother, so he's very missed. But what's most important to me right now is that the judge sees it in favor of the attorneys here in the AG's office and release him, because I don't want anybody who wasn't guilty of the crime to spend any more time than they need to, because that's 15 years that he can't get back. So I just want to apologize to Edgar and his family and anybody who was affected by it besides my family for everything that they've endured over these years. I'm done.
I've had the privilege of getting to know Jesse's family over the past several weeks, and they are extraordinary, extraordinarily compassionate. And what I've said to them, and I want to say to you, is no family should have to be in the position of apologizing because the system failed and sent the wrong man to prison. And hopefully, we are hopeful that the judge will correct this. Thank you. Questions? Lou?
The original prosecutor, Susan Crum, sent you a thing that kind of went piece by piece over a lot of the things that you just talked about. The kind of central idea, though, is she says that a lot of these issues were debated in trial and was a key part of his defense, like the issue of him being on camera at a supermarket and whether there was enough time to drive there. So, I mean, what's your response to that? Are you, or is it, how is this not just telling the jury that the jury got it wrong and taking away the decision they made?
So as to the Cub video, what was presented at trial was somebody driving the path from the parking lot without any of the stops that the witnesses actually said happened. And so that evidence that was presented at trial was wrong. It was inaccurate. So the jurors never got to see that. We'll also say that the defense counsel in this case, one of them was disbarred, one of them was convicted of some type of crime. This was very poor defense. It was ineffective assistance of counsel. But I'll also say on that, one can receive ineffective assistance of counsel and yet still be guilty, but that's not the situation in this case. The conviction review team from the Attorney General's office received all of that information from the prosecutor in this case. They investigated that, they considered that, and arrived at the conclusion that we support today. Anybody else have a question before I go back?
So the other prosecutor in this case is a highly respected judge, Hillary Caligiuri, and one of the main investigators is Christopher Gators, who's one of the top brass at MPD. What role did they play in what you say was a wrongful conviction?
Well, I direct you to the Attorney General's report that talks about the roles that both Judge Caligiuri and Chris Gators played. They very clearly outline their roles in this case. Gators was one of the lead investigators, one of the two lead investigators, and Caligiuri was one of the two prosecutors.
Does this sort of situation undermine the public faith in the ability of these institutions to not have these sort of things happen, especially when you have highly decorated people that have led great careers in the wake of this? I just wonder how your office views that.
Well, I think that that's why conviction integrity units are very important. Because yes, I imagine that the public will be very shocked and surprised about what is contained in the Attorney General's report. I suspect that the public would look at that and be fairly appalled by what was presented at trial, what wasn't presented at trial, and what was ignored. But one of the reasons we created our own conviction integrity unit, and to be clear, this was the Attorney General's report that we agree with. But as you know, we've created our own conviction integrity unit. And the importance of that is to look at cases and see whether something like this happened, and if so, correct it. Another important part of this is to look at cases, and if things like this didn't happen, we can assure the public that in the integrity of a particular conviction. A third thing that I think is critical, and what we will be looking at here, is how do we make sure that nothing like this ever happens again? And that is really important to assure the public that even though this might have happened in the past, We are going to do the best we can to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. In fact, we plan on reaching out to MPD after the judge makes a decision and seeing if they're willing to sit down with us and see where both of our offices could do better in the future.
The timeline for what's next, when do you anticipate the judge to take this up?
I don't know. I think the judge has 90 days in which to come up with a decision, but we're hopeful that he won't take that long. The chief judge of Hennepin County District Court asked the Supreme Court Justice to appoint a different judge from a different, not Hennepin County, because of the potential conflict because of Judge Caligiuri being on this bench. So it is a retired judge from Anoka County, I believe, who has this case now.
There was another suspect whose name came up in the process of this case. Do you think he's the one who actually did it, and will there be any further investigation, try to file charges against a different person?
I think right now we're focused on this next step, and we are very hopeful that the judge will sign off on our agreement to vacate this conviction. When, hopefully, that happens, we will be sitting down and figuring out what next steps would be.
When, in cases like this, when somebody is released after spending so much time for something they didn't do, what is done to help them not only readjust, but any sort of reparations, if you want to call it that, for what they've endured?
I think that's a great question, which was when somebody is released from prison after many years, how are they being helped reintegrate back into the community? There is a reimbursement statute that a person can apply to, but that takes quite a while. So what I would say about that is not enough. If you can imagine somebody being in prison for decades, or in this case, we're coming up on the 16th anniversary of Jesse's death, it is extremely hard for someone to come out of prison, find a job, get housing, and just imagine in your own minds what's happened in public, in the community in 16 years. Think of the technology changes. So there's a lot where people need help, and I think we could do much better on helping people reintegrate into the community. Thank you.